with our guests from the University of Advancing Technology, and we ended last segment talking about Google Glasses and how that might be able to help. And I just was reminded of a time when I was in college, and what helped me become student body president at Arizona State University was that I had no Facebook at the time, but I had a spreadsheet. And every time I met somebody, I would write down their name and what they look like in very abbreviated terms and the encoded terms, and then a lot about them. And then I would enter that into my spreadsheet, print it out, and put it into my planner, because of course there was no smartphones back at the time. We were still on pagers back then, if that's telling you a little bit about my age. But anyway, people thought I was amazing because I would review that before I would go to calculus class, or I would review it before I would go to microeconomics or whatever it would be, and everybody was amazed that I remembered them and who they were, but I worked hard at it. The Google Glasses, having a little Jarvis in my ear,
sure.
is pretty amazing.
Who wouldn't want to be Tony Stark?
Yeah, absolutely. So whether you're a politician or just somebody who wants to amaze the opposite sex with all that they know about them, but of course you got to be careful not to be too stocky about it, right?
Definitely would not recommend that.
But anyway, lots of fun. So transitioning from there, what are some other things that either one of you think that might be fun for our listeners to learn about?
Well, what I'm looking forward to is when those Google Glasses do become pretty mainstream, the hacks that will then derive from that. Okay, like we're seeing things like the Kinect. Okay, basically optical motion capture for the Xbox, and now we're seeing people hacking the Kinect to get that depth data out and combining the depth range finding that the Kinect can do, combining that with the images from a digital SLR to create really interesting 3D meshes of the real world that you can fly around in.
Right.
Not the designer's intent. So what I'm really anxious to see is, what are some software designers going to do for something like Google Glasses? Is a cinematographer going to be able to walk onto a location and immediately get specs of, this is when the sun rises and sets on the day you're going to shoot, and this is the angle, and this is the direction the shadows are going to go, and this is the weather tomorrow when the shoot is going to happen? Are they going to get all that? Again, context, location sensitive.
Right.
But then I'm looking forward to seeing what the gamers will do. Because
Sure.
like Rebecca's an avid online gamer, World of Warcraft, things like that. I could definitely see the application where an avid WoW player might somehow encode their character mesh into their persona.
Right.
So they're transmitting it somehow into the collective data stream, the cloud.
Sure.
So now when you see them in public with your glasses on, you don't see Rebecca, you see her
Avatar.
Her character.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, or my avatar is pulled up on the screen and it's shown next to my picture and you can see, and so you have the context of me in both settings. So this is Rebecca, the Vice President of Programs at UAT. This is Iolite, who is the online character in Star Wars: The Old Republic and World of Warcraft, and does internet radio and does all this. So you get the context of the individual.
Hi,
but
Rebecca,
I also
nice
see,
to meet you. Oh, you killed me last night.
Yeah, exactly. We were PvP.
You're right, because there's a lot of people who don't know who's behind that avatar, right?
Exactly,
and so it's a great way to get to know them in real life.
And I think there's also a lot of other things, though, that gamers will do with augmented reality. Just the application, for example, for LARPing or live action role play is tremendous, right?
That's actually what I was kind of hinting at earlier, is that now we're back into the Dungeons and Dragons where it's all the imagination comes back into our head, but we're interacting with real people.
Exactly. Well, and it does things like, for example, you said there were two bases of the context application that you just gave for the Google Glasses. You gave both the industry that the professional was working in, right, who's a cinematographer, and you gave location-based services based on it. And so you began to overlap the way you would expect applications like this to do. But I think that you can do things. Right now we see these very early applications where people play games like geocaching, and they'll hide little prizes at different GPS locations, and you have to go find those little prizes, and the game is to see who can figure out the puzzle first. based on the prizes that are being offered. Well, imagine that in an augmented environment where I can just reach up and write virtually on the wall and leave you a message on the wall in the data stream, and whoever walks by and can translate that message is playing the game, right? And can work with it. So I can pop up restaurant reviews on top of the restaurant. You know, when you walk by it, I can, all kinds of stuff.
And only people who are wearing the glasses can participate.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Exactly. And it becomes, yeah, you know, I mean, I don't necessarily want to walk down the road of the star-bellied Sneetches or anything like that, but I think it's one of those things that'll become pretty prolific pretty quickly. So.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And also, since, well, I'm going to tie in a couple of things. So in our first segment, we talked about the liability that comes from people hack in, and there's data breach, and that there's insurance for that. Then now we've talked a little bit about that technology as it connects more and more, interconnects more and more, and becomes convergent. That it gives great technological boost and functionality, but also opens up for potential data breaches in the future, which is something that University of Advancing Technology, one of the majors and degrees that you have there is to, what's the proper terminology for it?
We have a degree in network security.
Network
cybersecurity.
That's the, yeah, cybersecurity.
So when you look at this, first off, cybersecurity is a continuous arms race, right? There is no break from it. There is no, like, your enemy disappears. It continuously moves, and it moves in more and more complicated and insidious areas. And so there are two things that you kind of have to get into your head. Nobody's safe. Don't even think it, don't even try it, just be aware. Nobody's safe. But how much of a target are you? Right? When you look at what's happening right now, the trend right now is I'm not trying to hack into your network at home, your private network, right? Unless I'm the neighbor next door who just wants free internet, then I'm not hacking into your network. Where the hacking is occurring is in financial institutions, in institutions that house millions of pieces of data, millions of people's credit card information. You know, DSW gets hacked. They were hacked a few years ago, right? You get a notification that your credit may have been compromised because they just took your credit card number out of the DSW database. Okay, then I need to watch my own credit and I need to do these sorts. So there are always things that you can do to keep watch and defend yourself, but you've got to remember that a lot of this information is stolen and then isn't used for 3 to 5 years. They just put it aside. So you think the danger is past and then, oh, it's 2 years, we should probably hit these ones that have an expiration date in October of 2012.
Right, they're like the rest of us.
And they're literally, they've just got wholesale. So
Okay.
a lot of things that you see coming out of Eastern Europe tend to be identity fraud based, and they were hitting the larger institutions.
Gotcha.
But you also see industrial espionage, right? There are countries hacking into our companies and stealing our intellectual property every single day. And that's how fast can I get it to market? If I can beat to market, then I make billions of dollars compared to the company that actually invented it. And there are quite a few countries out there that really don't care about patent law. And I would cite China as a primary infringer on that. They're finally beginning to care about patent law because other people are slowly beginning to violate their international patents. And now they're starting to care. And then there's also just protection of critical infrastructure. But the realization is that our entire sense of privacy and what people are going to know about us is going to have to shift. Just as a culture. I mean, the internet is forever. Don't think that it disappeared, so that the students that are now going through college need to be conscious of when their picture is being taken. They need to be conscious of, where was I when I was completely out of my mind the other night?
That's right. Remember,
sort of
kids,
thing.
check your privacy settings.
Exactly,
It's
and
really
don't let
true.
friends tag you.
I still remember there was a young woman who was putting up a huge protest because she felt it was demeaning to be in a business suit and because she was good looking to be in a commercial about furniture. And I pulled her aside and I said, do me a quick favor, go to your, nobody is logged into Facebook right now. Just go type in your name and pull up your Facebook. And on her Facebook, there were about 300 different bikini pictures of her on her Facebook account that she had not blocked her privacy settings. I said, before you get a little bit upset about being in a business unit on a commercial, be upset about who is seeing you across the entire world
right,
on
right.
Facebook. So yeah, people do need to check their privacy
Yeah,
settings.
so
and
this
always
is,
be careful with that.
and be aware, just be aware. I mean, there's things like, I'll give you an example. They've begun to fix those now, but you know these video infant monitors that are out there?
Mhm.
Those operate on wireless networks.
Oh.
You can drive by the house, pick up the signal, and if
And
you
have
have the
somebody else
right, and
viewing
you
your
can,
child.
and you can have someone else, viewing your baby in their crib.
That's a little creepy.
It's scary, is what it is. And so they discovered this. It's a real thing, but they began to close, right? So what do? It's an arms race. We find the flaw, we fix the flaw. We find the flaw, we fix the flaw. It's the same thing as any other practice. So like medicine, like law, cybersecurity is a practice. And it gets more complex and we build a bigger body of knowledge every single day. And so the best we can do is try and stay up with those best practices.